Today's daf, Be'ezus Hashem, is Masechta Menachos Daf Nun Gimel 53, and we're beginning Be'ezus Hashem the fifth parak of Masechta Menachos, called Kol HaMenachos. Says the Mishnah, Kol HaMenachos, every mincha bois matzah has to come when it's matzah, because the pasuk says. We're going to learn why. I mean, you have to make it matzah, and it's not allowed to be chametz. And if it turns chametz, it's pasal. The mincha is pasal. Chutz, the exception is the chametz of the taida, the chametz of the taida, ushtei alechem. Those the shtei alechem shein bois chametz. They come chametz, as we've learned previously. The shtei alechem was brought on Shavuos along with the two shlamims of the shalmei tzibor. And these were not brought on the mizbeach, but they had a din like a mincha. It was like a mincha. It was eaten by the kahanim. So this bread was made of chametz. Also, there were 10 lachmei taida. A person is obligated to bring a carbon taida. Let's see if I have a picture. Brings a carbon taida and an animal. He also brings along with it breads. So 3 of the breads, 40 breads, but 3 of the breads are made. 3 sets of breads are made like matzah breads, different types of ways of making matzah. The 4th bread was chametz bread. And the kohen, by the way, got 1 part of each of the set of 10. So he got 4 breads out of the 40. And the 36, you celebrated your carbon taida with your friends. And obviously the kohen did a tenufa, and he kept the breads and part of the carbon. So that was the din of a lachmi taidis. So the Mishnah says that bread had to be made of chametz, because the Torah tells you achalis lechem chametz, that along with the taida came a chametz bread. So now, how do you make it chametz? So we're going to have here machlokes, and we'll discuss it more in the Gemara. Rab Meir says hasaor boida lehem mitoichen u'mechatza. The saor, you take the dough and you bring it and measure the isarain, the measurement of dough, your measurement of flour days before, and then you let the dough start to ferment. You pull out one, and you put it back inside, and that causes the rest of the dough to become chametz. So it's not like you're bringing chametz yeast from your house to help the fermentation process. Rabbi Yehuda says, "Af hi eina min mifcha." That's not the right way to do it. Ella maybe as a sa'ar, you bring sa'ar from your house. That's not chulin sa'ar. And you put it into the measuring cup, and then umali asamida, and you put in the measuring cup the soilus of the flour of the mincha. And that's how. So Rabbi Yehuda says it's best off to bring a already fermented piece from your house that's fermented, aged already, and that will make the bread a better type of bread. So they told Rabbi Yehuda, "Afi chesera or yesera," but then you're missing something or adding something. Something is going to be off with the amount of isarin that you need for the flour, because you're filling it up, you're taking the space up with sa'ar, which is not part of the isarin. So we'll see more about this machlokes in the Gemara. But let's just get this more is a little bagadita, and a little. We start off with just understanding the Mishnah. Rabbi Preda asked a question from Rabbi Ami. I wonder if this is Rabbi Preda that learned with a Talmud 400 times. We find a special Rabbi Preda who lived a long life. Anyway, he asked a question from Rabbi Ami. How do I know every mincha has to be matzah? How do you know it cannot be chametz? So the Gemara says Rabbi Ami was troubled by the question. And Alan, what's your question? How do you know? The ksiba, wherever it says a mincha, it always says somewhere when you make the mincha matzahs, bake it matzahs, ksiba, and the like ksiba, even if it didn't say by this particular mincha that it's supposed to be matzahs, but there is a general pasuk that says that every mincha has to be chametz. Ksiba, it says, okay, every general mincha has to be matzah. Ksiv, it says in the pasuk, we go to Amid Aleph. Zois Toras Hamincha Hakrev Oisa Bnei Ahar Lifnei Hashem El Pnei Hamizbeach Ba'Niseres Mimeno Yokla Har Mavana. First, the mincha, the kamitza belongs on the mizbeach, and what's ever left over should be eaten by Aharim. Matzahs Teichel, make sure that it's matzahs when they eat it. So we see from there that it's to be matzah. So what's your question? That how do I know that the minchas are all matzahs generally? Amalei. Rabbi Predes explained his question. Mitzvah loikami baile. I know it's a mitzvah that they have to make it into matzahs. Kikama baile. I question is le'akev. What happens if it turned into chametz? Let's say you left it out or whatever it is. It turned into chametz. How do I know that it becomes possible? How do I know when you left it out and it became chametz, that b'di'evid, even b'di'evid, the mincha is possible? Amalei, so Rabbi Ami says, the akav nami ksiv. There's a pasuk that says that you have to bake it when it's matzah, because the pasuk says loy seyafeh chametz. Don't bake it when it's chametz, ela matzah. So we see from there that it has to be matzah. So what's your question? And presumably that if it was baked when it was chametz, the mincha is possible. So what is your Rapreda's question? So the Gemara is going to say that Rapreda's had a question because loisei afeh chametz only tells you that you can't bake it when it's absolute chametz, but there are prior steps before it becomes chametz. Let's say you have a dough, a dough. So that's when you first make it, it's not chametz. But then it changes color. So according to a mayor, when it changes color already, that's called chimutz process. It's not chametz. It's not chametz, but on Pesach, if you would eat it, you would get malchus. So, and then, according to Rabbi Yehuda, that even if it changes color, let's take a look at the picture. Even if it changes color, it's not considered chimutz, only if it turns into, you have a crack. Like you see the middle picture, it started to have cracks. According to Rabbi Meir, this was chametz vadai. According to Rabbi Yehuda, this is called chimutz. It started to the fermentation process, but it's not chametz directly. The only thing that's chametz directly is this. When it started cracking and there's cracks all over and connected with each other, then that's chametz. But this is chimutz, where the dough is not yet considered chametz. According to Reb Meir, this is chametz, and over here, when it changes colors, right over here, then it's already considered to be starting the fermentation process. That's very important. So the question the Gemara says, maybe the Torah tells you lo yisei chametz, don't bake the mincha when it's chametz, but you can bake it when the fermentation process just began, and it's not yet called chametz. So the Gemara explains, Siyur Daman, maybe they'll say, don't bake it when it's chametz, ela siur, when it just began the fermentation process. So the Gemara says, Siyur Daman, the beginning of the fermentation process according to who? Either Rabbi Yehuda, if the fermentation process that began, according to Rabbi Yehuda, which is this process, according to Rabbi Meir, the fermentation process, Rabbi Yehuda holds that this is not even chametz. This is nothing. This is that's matzah ma'aliyah heat. That's not chametz at all. It's not even seir. That's according to Rabbi Yehuda. That's not even beginning anything. Either Rabbi Yehuda or Rabbi Meir, if the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda or Rabbi Meir, according to Rabbi Yehuda, this is the beginning. The middle picture is the beginning, but according to Rabbi Meir, this is chametz already. So of course, it's part of the pasuk. Chametz ma'alihi. Either Rabbi Meir or Rabbi Meir, if you want to say Rabbi Meir's beginning of chimutz, vidoloke alei chametzu. Rabbi Meir holds that even in this picture over here, right over here, according to Rabbi Meir, this is the beginning of the chametz process. Yet you won't get kares, but you get malchus. So it's somewhat chametz. Rav Meir is very strict. So automatically, as soon as something happens to the dough, it's chametz. So therefore, of course, it won't be kosher for a mincha. Ella, the question is, Rabbi Yehuda. Maybe, according to Rabbi Yehuda, with Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. According to Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, this part. Rabbi Yehuda says this is called the beginning, the middle picture is called the beginning of the chametz process, but not completed like over here by the third picture. So therefore, if it's the beginning of the process, and Rabbi Yehuda holds if you eat it, you don't get kares and you don't get malchus. So it's just an in-between process between chametz and matzah. So maybe, according to Rabbi Yehuda, would you be considered that if you baked the mincha at this point? That's the question of the Gemara. The Gemara's question is, if according to Rabbi Yehuda, if you baked it at this point, would it be considered a problem of loisei afer chametz? That's the question, and that was the question of what Rabbi Preda asked Rav Ami. Maskef lo Rav Nachman Yitzchak. Rav Nachman Yitzchak asked the question, and he explained this is what Rabbi Preda meant something else. Maybe they'll say loisei afer chametz. The Torah says don't bake it chametz. Ela cholet. You're supposed to boil it in water. Maybe that's what the Torah says, that if you boil it in water, there's a chiyuv, don't bake it chametz, but you should make sure you boil it in water. I guess if you boil it in water, let's see if you a picture of boiling in water, or you pour hot water over it. Sometimes you build the chametz here, chalita. Maybe the Torah is saying that you should pour hot water over it. Don't bake it chametz, but you could pour hot water on it. Maybe that arrests the chametz process. I mean, that's what the Torah says. Why should I put boiling water? Revika, to do the spilling of the hot water on it. If the Torah tells you to do it, then the Torah will tell you to do it. Maybe, but it doesn't. When the Torah doesn't tell you to do it, you don't have to do it. So the Gemara says maybe this is what the pasuk means. Maybe loisei afer chametz is the extreme. Don't bake it chametz, right? But if you want to put hot water on it to protect it, you could boil it in hot water, and if you want, you could make it matzah. But there's no isser to put boiling water on it, and maybe that's what loisei afer chametz teaches you. Maskef lo Ravina. Ravina asks a question. The Ema, let us just say, loisei afer chametz means don't bake a chametz. Here, the making gavra b'lav be'almo, that the person who does bake the mincha chametz gets a lav. The ifsu loy mepasle. It doesn't become puzzle. So we have a problem. Rabbi Preda, in the beginning of the sugya, asked the question of how do I know that every mincha has a din of matzah? One of the questions is, but doesn't the Torah tell you loisei afer chametz? So don't bake it chametz. So from there it says that if you bake it matzah, if you bake it chametz, it's puzzle. So the Gemara says maybe it means something else. And finally, the Gemara says maybe you're right. The Torah tells you don't bake it chametz, but even if you did bake it chametz, maybe it doesn't become puzzle. So the question is, how do I know if I take a mincha and bake it after it became chametz? How do I know that it's puzzle? Element nolam. How do I know that? Tanya, we learned to the brisa. Matzah tia. It says in the pasuk, matzah it should be. Yochol mitzvah, Talmud loy tia. It has to be matzah when you bake it. Hakosev kavah chayva. The pasuk made it absolute. That's an obligation to bake it when it's matzah. So, and if you bake it when it's chametz, the mincha is puzzle. Boy, my name Preda Rabami. Preda asked another question from Rabami. But I know how to know. How do I know? Every mincha that is needed with warm water. You have to specifically say, I'm watching it as a mincha, that it shouldn't become chametz. Certainly you have to watch it, but you have to do it lishma. Like, they always say when they bake matzahs, They say l'shem matzahs mitzvah. So when you're baking this mincha, you have to say l'shem mincha. Do we learn it from Karban Pesach? The ksivu shmartim as hamatzos, that you also have to make sure you have to watch the matzahs. You have to do shmira has to be l'shem the mitzvah. Amalei. So Rabbi Ami answered begufay ksiv. The Torah tells you begufay ksiv. So the Torah tells you Amalei begufay ksiv. It says by the mincha matzahs tia, and we darshan matzahs tia hachayehu. You have to make the matzah come. You switch the hay for the ches, and hachayehu means you should prepare it and watch it l'shem that it doesn't become chametz of l'shem mincha. Says the Gemara, didn't we use this matzah? This is matzah tia for some other drasha to teach you that you're not allowed to, if you bake it as a chametz, it becomes pasul. And same in kain lichtev kra matzahi. It is matzah. Matia, what should be? Shamat minei tarti. You learn two ideas from this pasuk. One idea you learn from the pasuk that if you bake it as a chametz, it becomes pasul. And the other thing is that we learn that not only do you have to make sure it doesn't become matzah chametz, you have to watch it l'shem mitzvah mincha. Amrle Rabbana, now a new story in Garata. Amrle Rabbanu Rab Preda. The rabbis, the students told Rabbi Preda that there's this person called Ezra Bar Bered Rav Tilas, to Asiri Lazor ben Azir, the Asiri Ezra Koyabava. This person Ezra, whose great-great-grandfather was Ezra, he's from the family of Rav Loza ben Azariah and Rabbi Tilas, and he wants to come learn in the yeshiva. So now they gave him the whole yichus of this person. Alma Michael Lehai, so Preda says, he told the admissions officer, why are you telling me all this about his family? Ibar Urin, who if he passed the exam, then he's good. Ibar Uri Bar Avoy, if he knows how to learn, his grandfather knows how to learn, and his parents, that's great. Vibar Avoin, if his father knew how to learn. Veloy Bar Urin, he can't learn. Esha Techle, then a fire should eat him or destroy him. In other words, it is more of a complaint against him that he comes from such an illustrious family and he doesn't know how to learn. So the administrator's office told him, admissions office told him, Bar Urini, he knows how to learn. He passed the exam and he comes from a nice yichas. So Rapreda said, let him come into the and learn. Chazia, so Rabbi Preda saw the Hava Achira Daite, that he was like very anxious. So he saw the boy was very anxious. This Ezra boy was very anxious. So he said, let me start. We're not going to start the share with learning anything deep. We're going to learn Haggadah. Pasach va'amar, and he said like this: Amart Lashem Adonai Ata Tevasi Balalecha. We say to Hashem that you are the master, and we shouldn't be Tevasi Balalecha. The good, you don't have to repay us for that good. So what is this conversation going on between the Eibishter and the Neshama of the Yisrael? The Jewish people have one collective soul called Knesset Yisrael. All the Jewish people are part of this thing called Knesset Yisrael. Amra Knesset Yisrael Lefnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Knesset Yisrael say to God, Ribbono Shel Olam, the Jewish people, Hachzik Li Tova, we should get a lot of credit. We let the monotheism be known in the world. We told the world, Lashem, that God's involved in the world. Lashem, Adonai Ota. That's how you read it. And he's the master of the world. Amalai, so God said, it's not you. I don't have to thank you. That they were the first one to make me known in the world. That those that are buried in the ground, those majestic people, anything I desired came through them. So we really have to thank Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, the founding fathers of the Jewish people, for our success. That we are the ones that spread the monotheism in the world. I guess Rabbi Preda brought this in because Ezra came from this long lineage of people, and Rabbi Preda was telling him that you could thank your elders, your lineage, that you also became a Talmud Chacham. So this Ezra said, Kibim Deshami Kama Adir, since he heard the word Adir, majestic, so Pasach Ba'amar, he started to say something that also used the word Adir. Yavai Adir v'Yiparal Adirim Adirim Badirim. That's what he said. This was the expression, a way to remember things. Yavai Adir, the majestic ones, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ksiv Adir B'Amar Hashem, v'Yiparam LaAdirim, and he should take revenge on behalf of the majestic ones. Eli Yisrael, Shnema Vadiri Kol Chavsivam, Me'adirim, from majestic people, Eila Mitzrim, Shnema Tzel Kvaris Mayim, they sank like lead in the waters. Adirim, these majestic people, these strong people. Ba'adirim Elu Mayim, that refers to the waters that was majestic. Shenema Makoyos Mayim Rabim Adirim Mizbre Yom Adir B'Morei Shem. So that's Adir B'Morim. Adirim Mizbre Yom. So basically, he said, Yovai Adir, let God come. The Aparil Adirim, take revenge for the Jewish people. May Adirim, from the Mitzrayim, who are also called majestic people. And how to take revenge from them? Ba'adirim, in the majestic waters. Then he said this another statement. This Ezra said another statement. Yova Yedid ben Yedid, V'yivne Yedid, Liyedid Bechelko Shel Yedid, V'yischaper Bo Yedidim. I think this is a Shweki song. So Yova Yedid means Zeh Shlomo HaMelech. Shlomo HaMelech, the Yedid, the beloved one, the Ksiv Yishlach B'Yad Yonan Sanivik Rishma Yedid Yebabu Hashem. One of Shlomo HaMelech's name was Yedid. Then Ben Yedid, he's the son of Yedid, Ze Avram. It's referring to Avram, the Ksiv Ma'ali Yedidi Bebesi. Yedid is somehow called Avram. And B'yivne Yedid, let him build the beloved thing. Ze Beis HaMikdash, the Ksiv Ma Yedidus Mishkanesecha. Li Yedid, for Sheh HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Ksiv Oshira Na Li Yedidi. Bechelko She Yedid. And what is the purpose of the Beis HaMikdash? So that's like a mnemonic to remember that Shlomo Melech Yava Yedid, the son of Avraham Avinu, build the Beis HaMikdash to the Jewish people in the part of Eretz Yisrael belonging to B'Yadamim, to Binyamin, Yischaper by Yedin, and the Jewish people should have a kapara. So if Yivne Yedid, he should build a Beis HaMikdash. Then he said another thing. Yavai Toiv, V'Kabel Toiv, Mitoiv L'Toivim. Yavai Toiv, let the good one come. Zeh Moshe, the Ksiv, Atera Isa Ki Toiv, who? V'Kabel Toiv, and let Moshe Rabbeinu accept good. Zeh Torah, the Ksiv, Kilekach Toiv Nesati Lechem. Mitoiv, from the good ones, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Toiv Hashem L'Kol, La Toivim, El Yisrael, the Ksiv V'Tiv Hashem L'Toivim. So the way to remember Kabbalah's Torah is Yavai Toiv, let the Moshe Rabbeinu, the good one, accept the good thing, which is the Torah. Mitoiv, from the good one, which is the Eibishter, La Toivim, for the Jewish people. And then one more. Yavai Zeh V'Kabel Zois Mizeh La'am Zu. Yavai Zeh, Zeh Moshe Rabbeinu. This one should come, the Ksiv, Zeh Moshe Ho'ish. V'Kabel Zois, Zeh Torah, the Ksiv, Zois Tarsha Moshe. Mizeh, Zeh Kadosh Baruch Hu, the Ksiv, Zeh Kelev Ambeir, La'am Zu, El Yisrael, Shnema Amzu Knisa. So it's like he was poetic somewhat, this Ezra. Yavai Zeh, Yavai Zeh, V'Kabel Zois, Mizeh, La'am Zu, also refers to a statement about Kabbalah's Torah. Amar Rab Yitzchak. Rabbi Yitzchak said, "B'shosh Chorav Beis Hamikdash, when God was destroying the Beis Hamikdash, Matzah Hakadosh Baruch Hu Avram Shoyayim Beis Hamikdash. He found Avram Avinu who was standing in the Beis Hamikdash. Amaloi, my didi Beisi, what are you doing here? Says God. Amaloi al iske bani base. I came because to do something on behalf of my children. Amaloi. So God told Avram Avinu, Benecha Chatu V'Golu. your kids did an avera and they were exiled from the base of Mikdash. Amaloi, so Avram Avinu said, Shem b'shaygichatu. Maybe they were doing it by mistake. Amaloi asoisa hamazim masa. God said they did it on purpose, what they planned. Amaloi Shem emiyatachamim. Maybe not all of Klal Yisrael did the avera. Amaloi harabim. Everyone did it. Most of the people did averas. So God says, Avram Avinu says to the Eibishter, why are you destroying the base of Mikdash? Didn't they have a bris milah? Why don't you remember that? That they weren't keeping the bris milah. So Avram Avinu still wants to ask God, why are you destroying the base of Mikdash? Shema im if you waited enough time, they would have done tshuva. So God says, they did so bad that they were so happy about their badness. It didn't look like they were ever going to come about to do tshuva. Then, when there was no hope, Avram put his hand on his head and he was screaming and crying. And he said, there's no way to fix, to repair Klal Yisrael. So a voice from heaven came out and said to Avram Avinu, Zayis ran in Yefei Pri Torah Kara Hashem Shemech. Ma Zayizu Achrisoi B'Saifoi. Af Yisrael Achrison B'Saifon. In the end, everything will be all right. Just like an olive tree, nothing happens in the beginning. It takes a long time, but then eventually you have fruit. So also the Jewish people, takes a long time for them to develop, but the end will be good. Then the pasuk says over there, and we're darshaning psukim in Yirmiyah, l'kol hamula gedola hitzis el eish alel v'ro lo yisehal. Amar Abchina bar Papa, l'koil mileim, because of the sound of the words of the Meraglim, nisroi ahu dol yisein shel Yisrael. It shook dol yisein shel Yisrael. Dol yisein is I don't know what it means, tar valish belaz. They were crushed. I guess the Liaseyim, all their courage was crushed. The Amar Abchinin about Papa, the spy said they did something very bad, a big thing. They said that the giants in Israel are greater than him. Greater than him, greater than God. Abishta created the giants, but Meraglim said to the Jewish people that even God himself would not be able to remove these giants from Eretz Yisrael. So that's what he darshan the pasuk. Rab Chanina bar Papa darshan the pasuk koil hamula, because of the words of the Meraglim, that took away any of our guts, so to speak, to go into Eretz Yisrael. Maskef l'Rabchia Barabchinina Hai l'Kol Hamula Gedoyla l'Kol Mila Mabayle. It should say because of the words, not Hamula. What does Hamula mean? Ella Amalaya Kadosh Baruch Hu Avram. Kadosh Baruch Hu said to Avram, Kol Shemati v'Chamalti Alem. I heard your sound. And Hamal could turn into Ches, the Chamal Te'alem, and had Rachmanas on the Jewish people. Alma Ani Amarti, God said, Yishtabdu ba'arba malchus kol achas va'achas, that between the four Goluses, right, Mitzrayim, Bavel, Paras Amadai, and Edom, we should be there for a very long time. Kishir arba malchus. Hashta now kol chada v'chada ma'ida pasikla. Now it's going to be easier, much less time for all these arba malchus. In other words, the gullus would have taken a lot longer, but because Avram cried on our behalf, it's going to take a lot shorter. The other says ani amarti achas. It happened at one time. In other words, since the Jews were spread out all over the world, so they were yotze, so to speak, the gullus of each one of these gullus all at once. In other words, there was always people in Egypt and Bavel and in Persia and Edom. So it all worked out that the number and the amount of time that we're going to be in Gullus is going to work out to be a lot less, only because Chamula, because the Lekoil, because Hashem, because Abraham started to cry, Chamula, God had Rahmanis on us. So concludes the Gemara. Amar Rabbi Shua ben Levi. Why are the Jewish people like an olive tree? Leimelcha teaches you, Mazayas ain't olive noishrim, loibe moisachama, loibe kashama. Just like an olive tree is not destructible, the leaves are not destructible, not in the summertime, not in the wintertime. Af Yisrael, even Jewish people, even the leaves of the Jewish people, Jews that are not so frum. Elem betela elamis, they're never totally, they're indestructible. And Hashem is somehow going to make everybody come back and do tshuva. That's part of the geula. The Alma, why are the Jewish people compared to an olive? Just like an olive, you can't get the oil unless you crush it. Only through suffering are the Jewish people able to turn to good. Once we suffer a little bit, the Jewish people automatically have achdus and they come back and they're ultimately worthy of the redemption. Okay, so ended the Gemara on Daf Nun Gimel.